Okay, everybody, I'm glad for all of you that are here. This is our April webinar, and today we have Dr. Sharon Davis, who is from the University of Laverne. She teaches sociology and criminology. She is the immediate past president of the American Sociological Society. And Sharon and I have known each other a long time. And so I'm going to give it over to her. Take it away, Sharon.
Well, thank you, Barbara, and thank you for inviting me. I have always appreciated and admired the work and the organization, the League of Women Voters. So I feel very honored to have been invited to present some of my work and some of my views as a sociologist today. I would like to start my PowerPoint so you don't just have to look at me the whole time. And I'll bring it up. There we go. That's the name of my topic, Normalizing the Abnormal, what we have learned about extremism, inequities, and viruses. As Barbara said, I am a professor of sociology at the University of Laverne. I am just completing my 40th year. And I am the immediate past president of the Pacific Sociological Association, where I presented a variant of some of the work I'm presenting today just a couple of weeks ago as my presidential address. One of the things that I usually tell my students when I'm in a class for the first time is the way I see things and what I choose to present not only reflects me as a sociologist, but it reflects me as an individual who is putting a certain set of priorities on some of the issues. And so I have always found it useful at the beginning of classes, at the beginning of the semester, to say a little bit about myself. And I feel compelled to do that today as well, so that you know perhaps why I've chosen these topics to share with you. So, a little bit about me. I am a sociologist. My specialties are social issues, criminology, juvenile delinquency, and deviance. I believe very strongly in a work life balance. I will confess to you, I don't always manage a work life balance, but I do truly subscribe to one. And a little bit more about me outside of the academic pursuits I pursue. I love to travel. I have a very international perspective. I have visited 74 countries and have 4 more in the pipeline. And so traveling is very important to me. It defines in part my priorities and who I am. The picture there is of me along with a colleague and some students we took to Rajasthan, India, in case you're wondering. I also am not only a patron, but a participant in the arts, music. I practice voice and violin. I am a dancer. Israeli folk dance is currently my passion. I am a supporter of film and live stage, and I consider myself to be a social activist. And so that is a snapshot of who I am and what I do. Um, this is what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk about these changing definitions, what we have endured, what we're headed for, a kind of new normal as I see it. And there are 3 issues I'd like to share my thoughts and some of my research with you today. And those include the extremist politics, equity issues, and the COVID pandemic. I would argue perhaps 3 of the most pressing social issues that we have experienced in this last year and how it has affected our nation, how it has affected our communities, how it has affected our families and ourselves. I'm old enough to remember the 1960s, and I am old enough to be living through the 2020s. And some wise person once said, the periods of the greatest social activism are the 20s and the 60s of any century. And I've had the opportunity to live through a complete cycle now. And from what I've been able to observe, admittedly in my limited capacity, is this individual has said. Perhaps it has some veracity. Perhaps is true. Living through the 1960s, of course, the issues were different. We were talking about Vietnam, whether or not we had a right to be there. We were consumed with issues of colonialism. And then today, in the 2020s, we're really talking more about COVID and some of the related issues. But when you actually look a little bit more deeply, you can see that some of the issues that we were working with or against, some of the issues we were confronting back then, we continue to confront today, but we've added a few. So I do want to talk about some of the continuing issues as well as some of the new issues. I personally believe that we are at a pivotal point in time. We must decide as a nation who we are. We must decide what path we want to take for the future. We need to clarify our values, our beliefs, what we stand for, and then we need to make a difference. We need to do something. We need to act on some of those beliefs. And so this is a call to action, perhaps, as well as a review and a clarification of what we have endured together. All right. So, one of the things that's happened in this last year, as we continue to evolve as a country and as a nation, is we have developed new concepts and acronyms that most of us actually recognize. And many people argue this draws us closer together because we can talk the same language, the same in language, the same specialized language. But take a look at some of these concepts that I have put together for you and see, some of these have been around for a while, but some of these are quite new and represent some of the evolution of our culture. Yeah, social distancing. 3 years ago, no one was talking about COVID-19 because it didn't exist. Black Lives Matter. We recognize these acronyms: DACA, MAGA, WebEx, BIPOC. Yeah, Black, Indigenous people, and people of color. Yeah, so many of these concepts are relatively new, but most of us now know what they mean. Yeah, and some of these are tossed about by various political parties, but some of these are actually proper names of groups that now exist that didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah. We also have created some new or newer phrases and slogans. Take a look at some of these, which I am absolutely certain you've heard a few of. Fake news, make America great again, drain the swamp, yeah. Say their names, build the wall, stop the steal, I can't breathe, stay woke. Yeah. All sides create new slogans, new phrases. And I'd like to say something as a sociologist about these phrases and slogans. Phrases and slogans are both meant to unify and exclude. Yeah, unify and exclude. And so, what we find today is that we have created these new and popularized slogans or short, striking rally cries, memorable phrases, oftentimes associated with politics and social movements. These are meant to inspire and also incite. We use slogans to create recognition and inclusion. We begin to separate the in group from the out group. These distinctions are easily definable by both insiders and designated outsiders. Greater group solidarity is achieved through group participation and the chanting many of the following more recent phrases or slogans. But I would also argue, as a sociologist, excuse me, that many of these phrases and slogans uh, encourage people and even allow people not to think critically. You can get people chanting, and it becomes self-sustaining. People aren't thinking anymore. It's the cadence of the chant that brings us in and causes us to suspend some of our critical thinking as we feel mesmerized in the chanting of one or more of these phrases. I think political movements, political parties, special interest groups, we have heard from all of these, and these newer phrases and slogans are oftentimes what they're promoting, what they're sharing, and what they're using to invite us in to participate in their organizations and their thinking. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk, first of all, about growing inequities in our society. Growing inequities and the political rise of the extreme right. Yeah. It's difficult to identify the catalysts for this development, but one factor may be years ago when then President Ronald Reagan lowered the tax rate on the rich from 91% to 28% against his advisor's advice, paving the way for a class in society that are oftentimes referred to as the uber rich, the very rich. Some of these individuals have an economic net worth more than entire countries. Old established upper class families, such as the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, and the Gettys, have been replaced by individuals. And notice they oftentimes were referred to as families in the past, and now we talk about individuals. And the individuals who have replaced the uber rich families are some people you might recognize. The three most the three richest people in the United States: Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Elon Musk. Yeah, these are the uber rich of today. Today, America's 400 richest men and women, but mostly men, are worth a record $3.2 trillion, up 240 billion from just a year ago. Jeff Bezos, the richest man in America, is worth 179 billion as of last month. Yes, perhaps he's made more in the last couple of weeks. Yeah. The U.S. topped the list in 2018 for the country with the highest income gap between a CEO of a company and the lowliest worker in that company. For every US dollar that the average worker received, the average CEO earned $265, compared with Canada at $149 and Germany at $136. So our gap is the largest, and our wealth is concentrated in the hands of a very few. With the federal minimum wage pegged at $7.25 an hour, a vast underclass has been created, with many poor living in crowded spaces with multiple families, purchasing lottery tickets, and dying of COVID. Oftentimes angry, frustrated, lacking opportunity, and ultimately hope. Extremist views, social rigidity, and unsuccessful navigation of the hostile world occur. Homelessness, suicide, mental disorder may be spawned from these conditions, but also a need for guns for protection, religion for solace, and an unexpected identification and alliance with the uber rich. Disenfranchised youth and adults, males in particular, are at risk for extremist groups that blame scapegoats for their plight. We can't also forget about the shrinking middle class. The middle class in Karl Marx's time served as a buffer between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. But as of late, our middle class is shrinking, and middle class men and some women are very concerned about that. Our whole society should be concerned about that. We need that buffer. But oftentimes, as the members of the middle class find themselves sinking toward the working class or lower class, they experience fear. And that fear frequently turns to anger when it is perceived that others are getting ahead, going to the head of the line, doing better than they are. Conservative white males, especially, may feel that their unearned privilege is slipping away from them. Thus, there is backlash. The last gasp of white male supremacy is not going down without a fight. Yeah. And that fight has been more severe than was anticipated. The resulting anger and frustration oftentimes focus on those who are perceived as taking away their rightful privilege: people of color, women, LGBTQ plus individuals, and the other abled. They're getting advantages. They're getting ahead. What about us? That is the question. Yeah. So, in anger and frustration, what do we see happening? We see groups being targeted. Our major targeted groups right now: people of color, women, LGBTQ plus, and the other abled. Yes. Why do we give these people concessions? Why don't they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps? Why don't they just get jobs? Why don't they work harder? Why don't they get a second or third job? What's wrong with them? That's the attitude that many of these people take toward the targeted groups. These then are the elements of the rise of the political rise of the extreme right. It's composed of a diverse group of individuals, including the privileged and the disenfranchised, buoyed by religious righteousness and firearms and weaponry, to maintain the status quo and take that which is perceived as rightfully theirs. The new normal is in transition, and this alliance is dragging its collective feet to slow down our progress. Of course, sociologists expected some of this. The road to social change is oftentimes circuitous and rocky, but the spark and the catalyst to ignite the organized political movement came from the self proclaimed millionaire, perceived economically successful, narcissistic, full of braggadocio, Donald J. Trump. His influence, indeed, has set the U.S. back years on the international stage, divided the nation to the point that some pundits are calling the Second Civil War, and led to insurrection, discrimination, death, and destruction. During his 4 years in office, the U.S. became isolationist, withdrawing from the World Health Organization, withdrawing from peace treaties, climate accords, and we preyed upon our own weaker individuals and groups. This backlash, this resistance to change, has been greater than anticipated. Yeah. Second, I want to talk about inequalities and inequities. Racial justice, political, economic, health, and social inequalities and inequities are certainly not new issues. We have struggled to address them or simply refused to address them in the past. But events of the past year have ignited the nation and renewed efforts to deny equal rights and achieve equal rights for all Americans. In 1971, a musician, poet, and author by the name of Gil Scott Heron recorded the song, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." In 2021, the revolution has been televised. It's been live streamed, tweeted, and posted on Facebook and YouTube. Times have changed. After centuries of inequality and inequity, the most recent flashpoint was the brutal murder of George Floyd on May 25th, 2020. If you've been following the news, and I know you have, the trial is going to the jury this week. We are still in the midst of grappling with the fallout of the George Floyd case. America watched in horror as it unfolded. From Emmett Till to George Floyd, and for countless unnamed others, a system of injustice has existed for all people of color. The Black community, in particular, has provided an inordinate number of injustice martyrs. The Black Lives Matter movement reminds us too, and demands that all of us say their names. Remember those who got caught up in this struggle for equality. Say their names. Never forget. Yes, I just added one yesterday, Dante Wright. Yes, but these are some of the key names that we have heard and seen and been reminded of in recent months. They all died at the hands of law enforcement. Yeah. In my own work, I think we're and was
Okay, Sharon. Um,
yes.
um, on my screen, things got a little sticky again. Did they stick on your screen too? Anyway,
Just
yes. I'm just going to ask if people have questions. You can put your questions in the Q&A and we'll do our best to try to answer your questions. I don't see any questions right now. Um,
done.
um, I'm assuming that participants can hear me, and I'm assuming that Sharon is coming out and in because she's having Wi-Fi troubles. And so um, it makes everything a little bit complicated and difficult. I do see two questions now. Sharon, you're
Barb,
muted. I can't hear you.
yeah, I'm only about 2/3 of the way through.
Oh, do you want to go back and finish?
Yes, I would like to finish before answering questions, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. Uh,
Okay.
wait a second. Oh, I need to give you share screen opportunity. Can you share your screen now?
Oh, it's still up on my screen.
Oh, well, continue then.
Can you see it?
I cannot.
Okay, let me see what I can do here. Uh,
Would somebody in the audience put in the Q&A box if you can see her? Oh, yeah, somebody says they can't see your screen either.
okay, let me try to figure out what to do about it. Uh, not sure. Don't con-
I don't know if you can hear me, Sharon, but you're stuck again. Yeah. I think when she comes back, audience, I will ask her the one question about prediction. Can you hear us, Sharon? I don't see you, but I see your name. I'm sorry. Uh, I don't know how much longer we should try to do this. Um, but I appreciate there are 11 of you who have stuck with us. I appreciate all of you being here. That's kind of you, I think, considering the number of technical difficulties we're having today. Joseph, even though Sharon isn't here, I'm going to read your question anyway so that everybody can hear it, because I don't know if everybody can see it, but it's such a good one. He says, using the 60s as an historical reference point underscores the need to appreciate that much of what is being experienced for the first by most Americans is the second or third iteration of the trajectory set in motion by the Great Depression. I find it key to critical thinking that this history be appreciated. Question, how effective and permanent can attempts, lost my place, I'm sorry, to create a new normal be if all the warts uncovered during the pandemic are not identified, especially the influence of capitalism? Let me see if I can open the audio, Joseph. That would be good. Hold on a second. I have to do this one person at a time, so I'm going to go through the list and turn everybody's. Oh, I'm turning everybody's audio on, but if you're not speaking, please turn your microphone off so that we don't get that feedback. I see Sharon's not here again. So I'm the only one speaking. Joseph, would you like to go ahead and say a few things?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think that for at least those who are going to be the decision makers in the future, that coming upon this kind of iteration beginning in 2016 and ending, or not ending, but certainly the solutions having to be found beginning in 2021, that sometimes the perspective of the duration of these underlying issues can leave one a bit, I think, one, confused, but two, certainly not with the kind of appreciation of just how deeply some of these have been institutionalized, and that some way of awakening that understanding might, I would certainly hope, would make the current generation a little bit more eager to find resolutions, because otherwise many of the things that have happened will probably happen again and again and again.
Thank you. Sharon, Joseph had asked a really good question, comparing the 60s and talking about generations who have lived through it and current generations who have not. And then he asked if we could make it possible for everybody to speak, because we've lost most of our audience. So that's what's happened here. Would you like to respond?
What is the question?
The question really is, how effective and permanent can attempts to create a new normal be if all the warts uncovered during the pandemic are not identified, especially the influence of capitalism?
Well, that's a pretty deep question, actually. Um, my experience as a sociologist is that when change occurs, it occurs slowly, and it's two steps forward, one step back. I believe that we are currently in the step backwards phase, and I'm trying to get our journey restarted again. Uh, but certainly every generation that makes some progress toward creating a, a more inclusive society for all does experience setbacks. I believe that's what has happened now, but you know, one of the reasons that the younger generation is so important to us is that some of us old warriors start to get tired after a while and need some reinforcements. I think those of us who are warriors will continue to the end of our lives, but we need new recruits in the struggle for equality, equity, justice. So I don't know if I've adequately answered the question, but that's off the top of my head. Those are my first comments and
There
thoughts.
was there was another question that was asking you what your predictions are for going forward.
Well, if I let's see if I can I can go to the end of my talk if you want. I still had a couple more topics to cover, but if we're done with that, I mean, certainly. Oh, I'm disabled from sharing right now. Okay.
Wait a second.
Oh, I'm still disabled.
There.
Okay. Um, okay. So I'll just fast forward if you just want the end of it. Yeah, I was going to talk about some similarities between between the police and juvenile gang members, but we'll skip that part. Uh, that's currently what my big research is on. Additional targets. We have seen issues involving the Latinx community with the border issues, the Asian community with individuals preying upon them, and other communities. I wanted to talk more about COVID and show the differentials between who is contracting and dying of uh, of COVID, and how that also reflects some of the inequities and inequalities in our society right now. And you can see the differences. Also, we continue to struggle with our vaccination rates. And this came right from the LA Times that we're still not equal. We're working on it. That is showing some signs of decreasing, but it hasn't changed those inequities yet. I wanted to talk about decreased life expectancies, once again hitting people of color more than white people these days. And the World Health Organization actually lowered our life expectancy, whites by 1 year, Latinx by 2 years, and blacks by 3 years because of COVID. And our total COVID deaths right now stand at, well, we're pushing upwards to 600,000 people. I also wanted to say something about our rates of infection as part of that inequity. We constitute, that is, the US constitutes 4.5% of the world population, but we have had 19% of the deaths. So we're all suffering right now, and it's not over yet. This is what I think you're getting at this point. This is where the audience is at, and now I've caught up to the audience. What have we learned? I hope what we've learned is our democracy and our planet are fragile, and they really need stewardship. They need people to protect them. And I think that's where we come in, to be aware of that and to be mindful of that and to do something about it. We almost lost it. If it is a core value of our society, we must protect it. Our reputation is also fragile. Having visited 74 countries myself, we have a lot of repair work to do on our world reputation to reestablish partnerships and to gain trust. I think we can do it, but I also think it will take time. This points to the importance of informed citizens to choose their leaders wisely and to lead themselves. Yeah. Paralleling this, the fragile planet, we're in the process of losing it, right? If we want to save it, we've got to agree that climate change is occurring, it's real, we have to address it. 15-year-old Swedish Greta Thunberg got it right, calling out the world leaders and demanding climate justice for all. She asked, "How dare you? We will not allow you to steal our dreams and sacrifice our future for your short term economic gain." Yeah. The new normal is also involving youth in leadership, and not relying on them, but forming partnerships and mentoring youth. I think that's something we can do. Yeah. I think also, um, for anyone who thought that the work had been done for equality and equity in our country, I think we got a real dose of reality, because we have been witness to events from daily microaggressions to police use of deadly force on ethnic communities, on immigrants, on the transgendered, on women, and on the mentally challenged that really tell us otherwise. We must stand for equity and justice for all, especially those in the Black community, not just for ourselves and our own families and our own issues. We need to be citizens of the world. We need to be community members and community leaders. I think we've also learned that we must listen to science. It's not wise to question science or to flirt with a deadly virus. We did that and we lost. When we denied its existence for long, we disregarded science, we delayed an informed response, and we refused to comply with life saving directives, such as wearing a face covering. There were consequences for that, and there continue to be consequences for that. Yeah, the deadly virus has cost more than 500,000 people their lives in the United States alone. There have been serious consequences. The overrepresentation of ethnic communities and the poor in infection, hospitalization, and mortality rates, and the underrepresentation of these communities as having access to and receiving vaccines point to the continuing inequities in our society that we can still address. Yeah, we can be key contributors to the identification and solution of these issues. Each of us has a role to play, and some of us may play multiple roles. We need to trust our strengths, determine our fortes. Some of us may take to the streets and protest, march against injustice, join groups toward that aim. Some of us may become community activists and or contribute toward community organization, self-governance, and knowledge. Some of us may speak the truth to power, to community groups and elected officials. Some of us may find our strength in the classroom, educating the next generation of leaders or mentoring them in the community. And some of us may engage in research to study, identify, document, disseminate findings so that future policies may be built on science and not simply opinion. And so we can guard against revisionist history. Yeah. Change is inevitable. And definitions are changing. Life is changing. We may be passive observers and elect to chronicle that change, or we may be active participants, engaging as architects and creators of that change. Yeah, we continue to engage in our assorted endeavors, and we continue to participate and to lead. This is our future. This is our planet. This is our country, our community, our family. In short, we must be in this together. We must act together. We must take a stand together. We must educate together in order not only to survive, but also to thrive as a community, as a nation, as a world. So, those are my views. Let's see if there are any more comments. I hope so. Or questions and answers.
I think because quite a few people can unmute themselves, they can just ask their. Joseph, I muted.
I see two raised hands, Joseph and Dawn.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dawn.
Okay, I'm curious because you're talking about people responding, but where do you see, or could you discuss the power of the evangelical churches in politics?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where many people are getting their information.
Yes, and it's a really interesting situation that our country was founded on the separation of church and state. And yet there are many people who envision us as a theocracy. And
Yes.
that theocracy is Christian based. And of course, we have a multitude of religions. And oftentimes, when we talk about school prayer, really what the advocates for school prayer are individuals who say, well, it's Christian prayer, of course. And the minute you start to bring in, like, well, let's have a space for Muslim prayer. Oh, well, no, that's not what we mean. I think we've become very insular. I think we've taken cues from some of our leaders. I think we've become a bit narcissistic and certainly focused on who we are and what our beliefs are, perhaps not valuing the diversity that we have in this society. I do believe that evangelical Christians, if they're going to get active in politics, first of all, I think they need to be taxed as a corporation. They are selling religion. They are selling ideology. They're not offering comfort and knowledge about the sacred. They're really pushing political points of view, and I would certainly advocate for calling them a corporation. They're a business. It's the business of religion, and the fire-branding pastors are CEOs who claim to have their power through direct communication with God. And in my private life, I often say, God is not your personal hand puppet. You can't make God speak, but yet that's what a lot of these evangelical religions are doing. They're making predictions that don't come true. They're saying God ordained me to run for office and I'm going to win, and then they don't. So I do think there's a real perversion of religion right now, but I think you've got enough individuals who have such a need to believe and a desire to be part of a group that you get individuals that evangelical movements really appeal to, really provide a need or supply an antidote to a need that they have. And I, for one, in the business of education, really see that as, we may be lacking some things, especially we may be lacking a solid education, a solid base, an internal morality, a social conscience. I'm not using that as a criticism. I'm saying this is an observation of mine. I think we can solve those needs in other ways. But right now, the evangelicals have stepped forward and encourage people not to think critically, to get their opinions at church. And not to have opinions on their own. As a person who does believe in personal freedom, in education, in an informed electorate, I think that's very dangerous.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
I think we're just about also out of time.
Okay.
So I think we're going to say goodbye today. I'm going to apologize again to everybody for our technical difficulties. It's hard to tell why that'll happen today because we have not had those problems in the past, but we'll try to figure it out. And I thank you all for being here.